Welcome friends to another r/malicious compliance video. So I was checking my channel statistics and only one of you isn't subscribed. So if you're that one person, make sure you subscribe and support the content. That being said, our first story of the day is by Sabertooth Diego. Rental car company told me where to leave my keys, and when I left them there, tried to charge me for an extra day. So I refused to give them the car back until last minute. I rented a car for 5 weeks while my car was being repaired from a car accident. The rental company had a couple great policies. No cleaning fee no matter how gross the car was, and unlimited miles. Ideal for me, I live in the country and going anywhere is a drive. When my car was finally scheduled to be finished on a Monday evening, I called the rental car company on Sunday and asked about the return details. They said the return time would be 5:30 p.m. Monday, but I could just leave it at the shop and leave the keys in the shop's drop box. I said sure, and next night I went, got my car, left the keys in the box. I got in my car and the check engine light is on. Crap. Staff says come back tomorrow and we'll fix it. I go home thinking that I'll be sitting at the shop all Tuesday because I have no other ride. Tuesday morning, I woke up at 7 a.m. to the rental car company very angry and saying that they can't get into the drop box and the shop doesn't open till 9. I tell them I just did what they said to do. They told me that they would be charging me an extra day. At that, I'm furious. I leave my house later and arrive at the shop at 8:50. Rental car guys aren't there. I sit around and the shop opens. I grab the rental keys and give them my car. Right on time, rental car guys appear. They demand the keys and I ask if I'm still getting charged for an extra day. One guy's inspecting the car while the other tells me yes, I'm getting charged an extra day. Guy inspecting it comes over and says the car looks good, it should be ready to rent out immediately. I had cleaned it the day before because I didn't want to be a jerk. Well, I refused to give him the keys. Since I'm getting charged an extra day, that means it's my car until 5:30 today, right? At that he gets nervous, says they need the car back. I'll give you the keys now if you don't charge me an extra day, but if I'm charged an extra day, I'm using it. He refuses to bend, so I leave. At this point, I'm petty and angry, so I go straight home. I own a farm, and it's been raining like mad lately. I get to work. By the time 10 a.m. rolls around, the car is covered in mud. Like, this black car looks painted brown. I didn't trash the inside because I'm not that petty. I hop in the car and drive to the rental place. I'm pretty covered in mud at this point. I had put trash bags on the front seat to limit it. I walk into the rental place looking like I fell into a mud pit. The guy who refused to cancel the charge looks horrified. I tell them, this car is great for mudding. I'm gonna go mudding for the rest of the day, just swinging by to ask where to put the keys at 5:30. I'm all smiles and dripping sweetness. I watch the life leave him. His shoulders slump, and he says if I return the car now, they will cancel the charge because they need to rent out the car. I give him the keys and take an Uber to the shop where my car is ready. No cleaning fee and no extra day charge. Ha! If you rented out a car and they were stubborn with you like this, would you just keep trying to fight them on taking the charge off? Or would you want to do something like OP did and have a good mudding day in their rental car? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by I Hate Usernames 2. Apartment complex rented my apartment while I still had an active lease. Arkansas has well-known laws that lean heavily on the side of the property owner, which leaves the renter pretty vulnerable to owners who want to be difficult to say the least. Or at least they did when I lived there. I doubt much has changed since. So I move into town and find a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment, intending for it to be a short period of time while I scout the town and look for a more permanent place. As for paying rent, they wouldn't or couldn't take an automatic monthly check from my bank or charge my debit card monthly. It had to be a paper check for me with a 4-day late fee window. I hate writing checks and I had the cash, so I paid out the 12-month lease all at once. I find a great place about 6 months later, thinking I'll just break my lease and pay the extra 1-month penalty and walk away from my apartment. I call and let them know I'll be moving out. Long conversation short, the way the lease is written makes you think that's how it works, when in reality, at a second or third read, I'm still liable for the entire 12-month lease, and to break the lease essentially adds a 13th month worth of rent money. Knowing that up front, why would anybody break a lease is beyond me. So at this point, I've already made the deposits on my new place when this all comes to light. So I'm stuck with 2 places. I tell the apartment complex I won't be moving out, figure I'll just go ahead and let the lease run out, set the AC to 80, and open the breakers to keep costs low. I slowly move my stuff to the new place since I have plenty of time now, and in the end, I leave behind my ironing board and iron just to leave something, and I never really use them anyways. About 2 months later, I get a call from the power company asking if it's okay to transfer power into somebody else's name. Shocked, I reply, absolutely not, while laughing a little on the inside. I decide to give it a day before I call the apartment complex. First thing the next morning, I get a call from the apartment complex, and with a super snarky entitled tone I hear, "We need you to drop the power from your name so the new tenant can take over and move in." I explained that I still have an active lease on the place and can't fathom why they'd rent it out. She accuses me of abandonment and therefore she's allowed to rent the apartment. My reply went along the lines of, "I rent that apartment with the sole intent of having somewhere to iron my clothes. Did you not see my iron and ironing board there?" She said she did, and she took it to the office to get it out of the apartment. We go back and forth on the semantics for a little. I let her know that I'm open to receiving a refund to the date on the new tenant's lease, and at that time, I'd be happy to drop my name from the power. She refused, and the call ended with getting her boss's number from corporate. After mentioning to her boss that I can recognize a breach of contract when I see it, and that nowhere in the lease does it say I actually have to live there, not to mention her employee admitted to entering my apartment and stealing items of mine from inside, she quickly assured me that they're putting a check in the mail that day, refunding my money to the first of that month, and told me I could go to the office to pick up my iron and board anytime. Yes, I know I could have run up the power bill, but they'd only be able to do so much really, and a few days isn't that huge, and they didn't do it anyways. Even if they had, it would still be worth the expense considering the refund. Well, yeah, Karen. Doesn't everybody have a second apartment solely for ironing their clothes? Come on, get a grip with reality. Our next story is by Garp TTSR. Park poorly with your fancy car, watch me squeeze in and block you. This happened yesterday. My wife had some serious surgery and her family sent her some flowers. Unfortunately for us, no one knows our physical address, only our mailing address. I do a lot of cybersecurity and investigation work, so I keep the location a pretty guarded secret. The UPS store called us and let us know there were flowers for her. I headed over to get them and our mail while I was there. When I got there, most of the good spots were taken except for one. Then I looked and there was a fancy Lincoln parked across into the space next to it. I didn't want to park down 4 more spaces or around the back of the building just because this person couldn't be bothered to park respectfully. I drive a very old 2005 Chrysler Town & Country and I'm an excellent parker. So I lined up within the lines and slowly pulled forward, taking extra care to not scrape the offending vehicle. I climb out and head in to pick up my packages and the flowers. There were quite a few people inside, and I went to get the slips out of the mailboxes. While I have my back turned, I hear a female voice asking everyone, "Who owns the blue car?" She comes up behind me and asks me if I own the blue car. I turned and saw an older blonde Karen staring daggers at me with a smile on her face. I didn't know for sure who she was looking for, so I responded, "Probably." 96% chance she was looking for me, but I was in a mood. She says, "I can't get into my car," which was left running. She asks if I could move my car. I said I would when I completed my pickup. She smiles and walks outside. She looks back and sees me in line, 2 or 3 back from the counter, and asks what I'm doing. She says, "I need to go, I'm done." I reply that I'm waiting to get my packages. At this point, I see the 2 employees look at each other with a look of fear. I know they're not afraid of me, I've been with them for decades. I can only imagine the scene she must have done before I came in to get that kind of response. One of the staff calls me out of line and ignores the people in front of me, snatching the package slips out of my hand. Both of them abandon their posts and go to get my packages. Now keep in mind, I was in line waiting my turn. I did not in any way ask for them to jump to me from the people that were there first. The other customers were oddly silent as this was going on. They grabbed my packages, forgot one, had to go back and look for it. When I stepped forward to sign for the flowers, Karen was standing there with her arms crossed and tapping her foot right next to the signature pad, like so close I would have had to have leaned on her to sign. I made a motion for her to step back, and she stared at me, then at the pad. I stepped back and told her I had 3 hours and asked if she did. Karen huffed and took a half step back. I rolled my eyes and stepped in to sign. Karen says loudly, "I'll get the flowers for you," which she did. She snatched the vase and walked to the door. I knew she wasn't going anywhere, and there would be heck to pay if she accidentally dropped them. I signed for the rest of my packages and walked around her car to get to the back of my car. I let her hold the flowers because the packages were large and awkward. I needed an extra hand anyway. I loaded up and braced the flowers. She's standing directly behind her car and tapping her foot. I closed the trunk and went to get in my car. "Looks like you can't get in either," she cawed, because the car on the other side was kinda close, but it was within the lines. It had been there when I arrived and parked. "I got out, didn't I?" I replied as I turned sideways and crab walked slowly and got in my car. Before I closed the door, I heard one of the other patrons come out and ask why she hadn't left yet. She said she was blocked in, like he hadn't heard the exchange inside. "You shouldn't have parked across the lines, I guess," he replied and walked away laughing. I pulled out and got on the highway. She actually followed me for a long distance. I was in a company vehicle with the number on the side, so she's more than welcome to report me. I let my boss know what happened, and he laughed. I know that it might be petty, but for all of us that get blocked from parking in a spot by idiots that feel that rules don't apply to them, this is for you. It doesn't matter how many times you see it. Whenever somebody double parks or even, God forbid, parks a multiple higher than that, sometimes you have to just marvel at how bad of a parking job it was. Oftentimes it's so blatant that you realize it's not that they were bad at parking, it's that they literally chose to park in multiple parking spots like an absolute jerk. You gotta love the Karen police that literally followed OP for a while, like trying to intimidate them or something. And our final story of the day is by Older Sparky. "Well, if I'm not there at 9, why don't you break in and start without me?" A few years ago in rural Australia, there was a small empty government office building and Gary, a government department manager. The building had been vacant for about 8 months while committee after committee tried to decide what they were going to do with it. Gary was the manager of the infrastructure department, which was responsible for the upkeep and any modification to the building. Gary was not an efficient manager. One of his favorite sayings was, "Flick me an email," which was strange because outwardly he didn't seem to ever read them. He also had this knack of never being on time for an appointment. Not many construction industry people I spoke with seemed to take joy in dealing directly with Gary. Where we could, we'd go through everyone else in the department to get stuff done, so Gary became known as Speed Bump, something to be avoided if you could. Now, because I'm an electrical contractor who wears a few different hats, has been to a number of different rodeos over the years, and is afflicted with the curse of competency, I got roped into assisting Speed Bump with this building's future use. He asked for a 9 a.m. meeting at his office one day to discuss the building. Arriving at the outer reception 10 minutes early, I asked Jen, the receptionist, to let him know I was there. Jen comes back to me and says, "Gary's running late. He said to wait for him." About 30 minutes later, I asked Jen to remind him I was waiting. After a couple of phone calls, Jen says, "I can't get through to him in his office or on mobile. His office thinks he's left the building. No one knows where he is." I guess a reasonable person would have just called it quits and left at that point, or called or emailed him, or left a message with Jen, or something. But I was sick of Gary's crap. I'd learned ages ago that one way to help people with their timekeeping skills was through their wallet. So I went out to my work vehicle, got my laptop and a bottle of water, then went back into the reception area and set up camp in a corner. I had planned an office day anyway to work on quotations and project planning, so Gary could pay me to do it. My charge-out rate at the time was $110 an hour. 7.5 hours of very productive, spite-fueled work later, I called Gary on his mobile, got message bank, and left a message saying I waited for him and maybe we should reschedule. The next meeting was arranged for 2 days later, on site at the empty building at 9 a.m. During the phone call to arrange this, I lightly mocked Speed Bump by asking if he meant 9 a.m. human time or Gary time. He may have thought we'd built some kind of convivial rapport and was just being funny when he said, "Well, if I'm not there at 9, why don't you break in and start without me?" I was on site 10 minutes early and waited till 9:05 to put the battery in my angle grinder. The stainless steel security mesh over the window made a satisfying sound being cut. After duct taping the whole window, the hammer tapping the glass edges was less satisfying. The best sound that day, after gaining entry, was the security system siren. I was outside having a smoke with the security response guard when Gary turned up. The wind kinda left his company's sails when I shrugged and said, "Well, you did say." I'd like to close this tale by saying that Gary learned from my interactions with him, but as you'll probably know, speed bumps don't change. You either just have to go around them, deal with them, or remove them. And Gary just continued being a speed bump for some time to come. I didn't cop any serious crap over the 7.5-hour invoice or the damage. However, Gary did delegate one of his staff to work directly with me a lot more after this. It was a small win, but you have to savor those, I reckon. A win's a win's a win in my book, especially when with that win, you can annoy somebody that's been just a royal pain to you. And you got work done and got paid pretty handsomely for it, so I'd say that's a big plus. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.